Well, let's be sketchy together. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we gotta get this rear end knocked out. So I got a few things left to do on top of getting our rear drive shaft measured so that we can actually move this thing again to turn it around and work on the front end. But we're gonna start with something a little shocking. Now, one of the things I love about a Jeep Comanche is the shock placement because it's actually vertical. It sits on the outside of the axles, which is actually gonna give you the best stability. Old theory of thought was you put a shock in at this angle and then you get more flex. The problem with that then is you actually lose vehicle stability. Where you can see here, that is where the shock mounts on these Comanches. The only problem I have with that is I want to keep my gas tank where it is. It already is really, really tight against the shock. Secondly, I can't run as long of a shock. I'm gonna move my shocks to the back of the axle where then it's gonna keep the same amount of pressure, the same amount of stability. We're gonna have a lot more stroke in the suspension. So we know there's 1,000 shock companies out there. There's a lot of them that run the exact same baffles in their shocks, the exact same amount of dampening no matter what vehicle you have. So if you have a car all the way up to a big heavy truck, they have the exact same rebound, same dampening. The problem with that then is you have a very generalized shock that can make for a bad ride, either too soft or too hard. That's one of the many reasons why I like the Skyjack or ADX shock. Not only are these bodies made out of 6061 aluminum, but they also valve these for the vehicle that they're going in. The other thing a lot of people don't know is a remote reservoir, yes, holds more oil, allows for more cooling, right? It's gonna allow for more oil to flow and give you more cooling in your shock when you're working it really hard. But that's usually what people think is just like the standard thing. One of the things about this though is they can move the fluid into here so it can give you a much longer stroke of the shock. Meaning you can have a shorter shock body and have a much longer stroke of the shock. So that means you're gonna be able to work your entire shock and still not have to compensate in an extreme situation where you're gonna build these huge shock towers blowing out of your hood. Or in this case, through the bed. So the shocks I pulled off of here only had 8 inches of stroke. These have 12. Yeah. I pre-marked my point here where I'm gonna put my stud to come out, but I also wanna keep the shock vertical this way, and I want the base of the shock to be no lower than the axle tube. Because that's less stuff to hang up on the rocks, the exact reason why we did those U-bolt eliminators and moved our brake lines over the top of the axle. It's like a 3-inch tube. All right, so I'm still learning myself on fusion, but I'm getting a little better. Files, USB, shock tab. Look at that, Sheboygan. Now let's go to manual move. All right, so I cut out a few extra shock tabs that I can hang up on the wall, and then I'll keep those. I'll keep those here where I've been making my other ones. Dude, this tool has become one of my most favorite tools here in the shop. And one of the best things about Eastwood is they were willing to give me a discount code for you guys, 10% off anything they have. And they have a huge online store. Use the code COLTBUILDS10, 10% off anything. Shocky tab. So nice. Let's be sketchy together. All right, 2 inches plus the bolt. Upstairs we go. This should be 1/2 inch. Oh yeah, look at that. So when I designed these, I just made them just barely above a 1/2 inch hole so that they'll fit real nice. So you guys don't get to come up here with me very often, but Comanche looks rad. Anyway, I have a bolt bin here of stuff that I get from like Tractor Supply where I buy in bulk by the pound. And then over here is this, like, I got this thing off of like Amazon or something. This is just a drawer set, and then so like I have shock sleeves and bushings and everything right here. Different washers, small bolts, you know, small and large nuts, larger bolts, Heim parts, just different you know, rubber caps and some of the welding rod that I don't hardly ever use because MIG welders and TIG welders. But every time I get a set of shocks, if it comes with extra bushings or extra sleeves that I don't use, I throw them up in here because you never know. It's not hoarding if your stuff is cool. Now we have our shock tab bushing mount set up. All right. Perfect. Easiest way to get a shock sleeve in is just like this. Done. Oh yeah, that's gonna work nice. We get it about right at the back. That'll be perfect. All right, the next thing we need to work on is getting the upper bolt, or our upper stud here. I wanna weld it right to this, but I want that part to be pretty stout. And so I'm gonna do a little plate. We'll weld the plate on, we'll weld this to the center of the plate, and then we are gonna space it out with some washers so it sticks out far enough that the shock will mount good. Go back to Fusion here. We're gonna go to our shape library. We already have all of these already pre-made. So all I gotta do is just set up whatever length I want or size I want. I think we're gonna go, actually, that one would be kind of cool. I think we'll do this, and then we just gotta set our lengths. So this is all in inches, so you can see size 1. This is a 10-inch square. We definitely don't need that. Tape measure time. We only need about a 3x3 will be perfect. 3, maybe even a little less, but 3x3 is more than enough. We'll do 2.5. 2.5, 2.5. Now we gotta make these holes closer together, so we'll just make those like 0.5, size 4, 0.5, and size 5 is the radius, so 0.25, lead in, 0, lead out, because it doesn't really matter. And we now have 2.5 by 2.5 half-inch holes. That quickly on here, we just made the piece that I'm going to use for both sides. So now I can just kick it over here. Oops. Okay. Go to manual move. Come on over here. And it gives you a nice little red mark for your start point, so you know where it's going to start. So we can get it close, save as much material as possible. That looks pretty darn close. Actually, how wide is this? That's 3-inch. We can come right there. We'll save all kinds of material. 0. Perfect. Now we just make it again. That's gonna make it easy. Look at that. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. All right, so we got that, but it's not sticking out far enough. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna cut this sleeve so we can add a sleeve there. That's gonna set our shock where it needs to be. Pretty straight. Warm. Didn't clean that off good enough, but whatever. So we gotta take a little break on this so that those don't melt my shock rubber when I go ahead and slide those on. So we'll let that sit for a minute, and I'm gonna work on the next thing. Because of time constraints, I don't have time to get that brake line all the way ran back here. So what I'm gonna do instead is just mount this, since this was just hanging. We'll get a plate here and just mount this a little lower and call it good. I actually could just weld that right there and be fine. I think that's what we'll do. All right, now if you're wondering, when I put this shock here, it's gonna go right into this exhaust. Now this exhaust is totally shot. You can see through it. Hey, 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 hey. I have plans on making a totally new exhaust, but for now, I'm just gonna cut it off just this side of that hanger. That way it's out of our way while we do the shocks, and then I got something special for you guys when we get to that exhaust part. I don't even need to cut that much, maybe about a quarter of it, and the rest of it will fall off. Oh yeah. Well, I was trying to move the camera and it came right out. Goodbye, exhausty pie. Ooh, full of goodies. Got it. Yeah, I'm gonna save that. So this will be perfect. I mean, legitimately perfect. Just enough slack where it can go a little farther if it gets extra droop. Now it's just a matter of mathing out our brake lines. So we'll say 8 inches and out and down. $39 inches. Ta-da-ta. Ta-da-ta. What I want to do is bring that shock up about 1 inch so that this thing's at full droop with the leaf spring. Unless I'm really banging out of it, then it won't totally overextend the shock. We got more than enough up and down travel. So if I bring that shock up 1 inch, we weld it in, we'll be in good shape. I also added a really tiny spacer right here, and we'll take that back out after it's welded in. That way you don't have to worry about it sandwiching on the shock, and then you're gonna fight it to try to get it on and off. So if we have that little spacer in there, tack them in, we'll be in a lot better shape. One of the other great things about Skyjacker is they've been around for over 50 years, family-owned business, and what they have on their website is not even anywhere close to what they have in their inventory. So if you don't see what they have on their website, make sure you give them a call, tell them what you need. They'll find something for you. They don't make a spring over shock for a Comanche, so this is all custom stuff, so I gave them a custom length, and that's what I wanted. And it doesn't matter if you go online or if you call them. If you tell them Colt sent you, the code Colt builds it, gets you 10% off anything Skyjacker's got. Not too bad. Not too bad. Dude, that is the exact same spot, and I 100% eyeballed that. You saw me just use my micrometer, just set it up there and weld it, and it is like right on the money. Crazy. Shocky tabs, welded on. Woohoo! Pulled it out real quick, got my little shim washer out. Now we can go ahead and burn the inside of these on. It'll be good. That looks so good. All right. Might not have sealed it up good enough. Whoopsie. Wow. Might just be a top layer though. All right. We got paint, we just gotta get top layer off. Cool. Well, that's a win. All right, so I got my dollar store paintbrushes and a can of Krylon. Now, I'll tell you right now, if you spray paint your axle, it's only gonna last about a month before it starts fading. You do this, it's good for like a solid year and it still looks good. It looks way better brushing it on than it does spray painting. And just like that, our axle looks brand new now. Bam. I'll go ahead and tighten those upper shocks up. Okay, so, right there, that's your light's about to go out line. The 80X shocks come with anodized aluminum brackets to hold the overflow on. Normally, a lot of people like to go in line with it, but I actually like to go off to the side here. That way it's out of the way of the rocks and I don't have anything hanging out any farther than the shock body itself. I also suggest putting a little anti-seize on these because they are going into an aluminum thread. There we go. Something like that. Looks pretty darn good to me. Just takes a 6mm Allen and you can zip her right on. Must be allergic to awesome. Bam. It's gonna be amazing. All right, the next project on the agenda is doing these e-brake cables. If you guys remember, I got the e-brake cable calipers, but our e-brake cables were not long enough. But we're gonna fix that right now by first removing this. Ugh. I don't know if I've ever got one like that. Does that mean the upper one's the same way? Not horrible, but I'll have to hold it. So I actually ordered an e-brake cable kit, but I kind of want to see if this idea works. I'm going to try something with the stock cables and see if I can make this work. So I really don't want to have to try to customize my cable mounting system with the one that I ordered online. This is where having those ratcheting wrenches comes in really handy. One down. Let's see if we can get this one. Two down. Okay, so hear me out. This thing already has a spring retainer that keeps it disengaged. What this had was this spring here in the cable. So I'm gonna try to cut this out because we don't need it, it's way too long. If I were to need it, I'd only need about this much spring. So I'm just gonna try to cut it out without damaging the cable. Only one way to find out. We'll see how I did. Maybe-ish. The end ones still don't look cut. So I cut it. Now I guess I get to figure out how to pry them off. Couple needle nose here to get a hold of this better. All right, this is gonna take a while. Got one. Yeah. Oh, don't get paint on yourself, Colt. There we go. We have an e-brake cable. Oh yeah. Now in another hour, I'll have this one ready. We got two. I just started popping each one off, but yeah, one less thing. All right, feed these back in. I added a little anti-seize to the stud here so that hopefully it'll run on and off even smoother than it did before. As we already know, now with the longer unit, I gotta come all the way up to here for this thing to seat at minimum. I'm already getting silver stuff all over every digit I have. Right. Those down. Now we gotta do a little modification here. So here's my new bolts that are a couple inches longer. I got a couple sleeves, and we're just gonna set it up in here and see if it'll reach without pulling too tight. Still just a skosh too tight, darn it. So I need to drop the e-brake cable bracket because my e-brake cables aren't long enough. The other ones still haven't shown up, even while we were at the off-road games. And so my first idea didn't work, but Shanna is here for the second idea. So I'm gonna hand this camera to her and then I'll show you what I'm gonna do. So what I need to do is lower it down and get enough angle so that the cables aren't stressed out. And to do that, I need it to sit about like this. So I need about 4.5 inches of droop on this side and about 3 inches of droop on this side. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut out a couple plates, and I think I'm just gonna weld them across here like this and like this. I'll put a plate across the top of here so we can get a bolt in at the top, and then we can do our long bolts that I have for back here. I think I just make 2 of these, that'll work pretty good. All right, because I'm pretty much making straight cuts. Instead of taking the time to run in, set it up on Fusion, make all that, I can just run it like this in manual mode. So all I do is go X, change my cut speed to about 33, we'll call it, enter. Now I'm matching my manual speed with my cut speed so I can just run it manually and we can get this thing cutting. There we go. The easiest way for me to just do this is like left, right, and things like that. So all I did was measure where I needed to cut here, 12 3/4, 12 3/4, squared up on my table, and then just went straight across. That's how I got my angled cut. Pretty fast, and this is a way straighter cut than I've been able to do by my hand manually. Cool. Everything's out to get me. One day, there'll be a set of gloves that I can work with that are still worth a darn. One day. Oh yeah, there we go. Getting somewhere now. So I think with these little modifications, we actually might have an e-brake, which would be pretty cool without having to do anything too extra special. Just tighten this one up on there. We'll be golden. Cool. Locked and loaded. All right, next thing I want to do is brake lines. Skyjacker makes nice extended long brake lines. And like I said, if you don't see what they have, give them a call because odds are they probably have it. That was my situation here with the Comanche. Perfect. All right guys, I'm gonna see if I can break loose this brake line. If you wanna take any bets on if it comes out with this or if I gotta use vice grips or heat, I'm gonna say if I get this, it's because I just wiggle it just right. Otherwise, I'm almost gonna guarantee vice grips, but that's the bet I'm taking. Oh yeah, that's already, I can feel it stripping. It's already sloppy, look at that. Yep. All right, that's definitely not, it's already stripped out. Dang it.
Is it too late to say vice grips? I was thinking it the whole time.
Oh, did I get it? Might have got it.
Oh.
Still not very free, but give it a little work action. All right, how about that? We got it without vice grips or heat, so that's a win. And now that brake fluid's starting to come up through there, it should free up a little better. Ever tell you guys how much I don't like brake fluid all over my stuff? Tools and everything. If I didn't, I'm telling you now. Come on. There we go. Got it. That whole thing's rusted in there. There we go. Goodbye. Hello. Got a new clip. You know you want to go in there. Oh, where it went. All right, so Shanna found the clip. It fell in between the shock here. I used the old clip to simulate hold it, but while that was happening, I was rushing to get the brake lines on because we spent some time looking around. All the fluid started leaking down, and then it ruined my paint job. Like I said, one of the 1,000 reasons why I can't stand brake fluid. I'm gonna change this out. I was gonna put the shocks on, but I had to repaint those sections of the axle tubes. So we're gonna let that dry, and we're gonna start on the transfer case. We got e-brake, we got brake lines. All we gotta do is bolt up our lower part of our shocks. Now, we need to get up in this. And I'm gonna show you guys a little trick. I know on a lot of YouTube channels, including my own, I've pulled the transfer case out to show you guys how to do it, but you actually don't have to pull the transfer case out to do a slip yoke eliminator. You can actually do it in the vehicle. So if you're like on the ground and you don't want to pull an entire case, you can actually do this. I'm gonna show you how, just as it sits. All right, so I went with a slip yoke eliminator from Rough Country because I think they probably have the cheapest one there are. And I haven't been able to notice a difference between basically anybody's kits as far as the SYE kits for a 231. So, pull everything out. And you know what? I'll email them today and see if I can get a discount code from them. If I can, I'll add it right here, but it'll probably be Colt builds it. I've never reached out to Rough Country for that, but I've used a lot of their stuff here and there. So we'll see if I can acquire that for you guys. Otherwise, buying this kit, I wanna say it was like right at $200, like $199.99. And this is why it's so important to do on the 231s and not just the hack and tap kit, because this is a lot beefier. So when I pull out the stock one, I'll show you the difference, but there is a kit where you can just cut off the end, thread it, tap it, and then slide a flange on there. That is not what I recommend. You actually want to change it out to an SYE kit and have the strength of this bad boy. So if you guys remember when I pulled this drive shaft out, I went ahead and drained the ATF out first. That way it didn't leak out of here. So we already have this thing pretty much empty. I mean, there's probably a little bit of residual in here, but I want to go ahead and pull these two things out, which this is just your vacuum actuator to let you know like, hey, I'm in 4-wheel drive, that would actuate your front axle if you had the CAD part. And then you have your speedometer. So we'll go ahead and we'll use my non-quality Walmart crescent wrench just so that I feel better about it working on something. Really don't have to pull this out, but I'm just doing it for grins. So this speedo gear actually can rotate in different directions where it won't grab the worm gear on the shaft. I like to go ahead and just mark it with a paint marker so I know what side it came on and what side it came off. So when I pull this off, and I slide it out, I'm gonna take 2 white marks and put them on right there and there. And then I'm gonna take a red mark or something and put it on this side so I know that that's the way it came in and out. Now you can see all the notches there, so I wanna make sure I have the right notch where it goes. So if I just put some red in here, now I know that it's this side against here. Easy enough. There we go. And you see, if I rotate this, this is actually farther away now. It won't grab, it won't work right. It's easier to see here how this is offset. So this side is shorter, this side is longer, and that's why you need to have this rocked at the right angle. You know who has 7 arms and is rad? Rocket, baby, come on!
Rocket, baby, come on!
So I got a crack in it? Or is that just, I think it is. Oh yeah, look at that. That's cracked all the way through there. This thing got wheeled at Easter Jeep Safari, and then he drove it to one event where they kind of did more overlanding stuff. So that's how weak these slip yokes are on these 231s in just stock form. Like, this is probably the #1 thing you want to change if you're gonna off-road it. One of the first things anyway. Next thing is get the C-clip out. Come on, baby. Here. Shadoing. 231s have a nice little pry bar point right here where you can get this part out. And the reason you had to take that clip off is so that you can get the housing out. Like so. Right here is your oil pump, and you want to be able to pull this tube out, and it's really important to remember that when you reinstallation, but we got to just slide this tube out and then we can pull the oil pump out right here. All right, I think I got it. Slide the pump out now. Almost. Come on, sucker. There we go. All right, so there's that tube. Here's your pump. This is super crucial. This pump is what feeds all the fluid up on the high side of your T-case. So every one of these bolts is a 15mm head except one. This seems to be almost every single 231J. This is a 10mm 12 point. I don't know why they did this, but they made one different. No idea why. So now that we got all these bolts loose, we got to pull this front drive shaft so we can pull the front yoke off. That way it'll allow us to remove this back case. All right, so usually these front outputs are 1 1/8 inches, but I have to grind it down a little bit to fit it in there. Did that a long time ago. Socket's still holding strong. That's Harbor Freight Special right there too. Perfect. Okay, so there's a pry point right here on this flat spot. You can pry this out and that'll make the case fall free. There's our residual ATF that didn't come out of the drain plug. Now we should be able to just slide this thing out. There we go. Hot dog. That's nice. Save the spring right here. And the next thing we need to do is pull all of this out. So it should come out as one unit. Usually the front end off. There we go. We can pull the chain, which is good and tight, which is a plus. Now, if you really want to beef these up, they do sell 6-pinion planetaries for the 4-low, and you can get a big chain kit, which comes with a wider tooth here to really beef this thing up. I figure if this thing fails, I'll just change cases altogether. Magnet's got a little metal on it. All right, this is what we need. Stay. All right, so we need to reuse all these parts that are on this shaft onto the new shaft. So we just got to remove the C-clip, which if you have a good set of C-clip pliers, this is going to help. And this should all just slide right out. And we need to make sure we don't mess it up and put it on the exact same way. Here's what I want you guys to see. Here is the difference between the original shaft and the new shaft. You can see how much larger this thing is from here up. This is what makes a difference. This is only like a 27 spline and this is 32 spline, and you can see there's a lot more size there. Because this is an older style T-case, it has needle bearings in here. So we have to remove these needle bearings so that it'll fit on the girth of this shaft. So you can even see here, there's a difference between this size of the shaft and this size of the shaft, which is the needle bearing size. Got one. Ugh. Got two. Only because this sits right on here, I put the finest small amount of red grease in here. And I don't want to put a lot because that could actually clog up our pump. That's going to allow this to slide on here nice and smooth. Yeah. All right, this thing comes with new clips, so you just got to slide it on. Hopefully, we can win that battle. There we go. Perfect.
That ain't going nowhere.
Ooh, this thing needs a new seal. This pump seal is actually bad, so I'm gonna see if I can find another pump seal in town. But the way this sits on, it comes up to here. And because this is the original Speedo gear and this is our new Speedo gear, we got a clip, the Speedo gear that slides onto these splines, and then another clip to keep it where it goes. But you can't do that until you put this on. Like I said, that seal doesn't look like it's doing anything in there. So. All right, so we got a new seal. I can pull the rubber part out of this, and it's not even like rubber. This thing, ooh, look at that.
Oh,
yeah,
geez.
that wasn't gonna do anything. Pop this part out. Might have to get creative with, oh no, it's coming. It's not expecting that. There we go. Say that's no good. Put in our new seal. It's gonna be so nice. Oh yeah, didn't even have to tap it in. All right, pull this out, clean up all that junk, because nobody wants that stuff in there. Stab this bad boy back in. Perfect. We got our magnet all cleaned up. One of the little tricks here, if you just put the tiniest little bit of grease in here. Now you don't, like I said, once again, you don't want a lot because you don't want it to get sucked up into the pump and clog your pump. But if you do just the tiniest little bit, you can set it in here and that'll help keep that magnet from falling out. Because that's aluminum. All right, this important part, don't forget to put your pickup tube back in here. And then once again, I like to put the tiniest little bit of red grease on here, on this rubber O-ring, because that's gonna help seat it into the base of this pump. There we go. Chain looks pretty good, not too sloppy. Make sure we catch the shifter and the output for the front. There we go. Come on. There it is. Perfect. Zip it back up. This is probably the most important part of doing a slip yoke eliminator on a T-case, and that is this pump and getting that tube pressed all the way back up in here. I've seen this. This is the #1 reason these things fail. #2 reason is because the bolts are loose because they took the whole thing out and they didn't tighten up the 6 bolts. Either the bolts are loose and it breaks, or it's not getting oil up to the upper half of your T-case and then it breaks. It'll actually snap the case in half here. So this is a huge reason why these fail. So this is what you gotta do. So you can see the tube right here. The goal is to get underneath this and push it up in there. Like I said, you want that seated all the way up as high as you can. And you gotta kind of roll it to get it in too. So it's the tricky part for sure. So once you get this, you'll actually feel it like pop in there, that O-ring seated. Then you know you're in a lot better shape of not blowing up your T-case. Now we gotta get our speedometer gear on here. First thing you gotta do is get your clip on there. If I can, there we go. That'll also help keep the pump where it's supposed to be. There, it snapped. Slide that on, then put our other clip on. There we go. Cool. So this is the shaft for the shifter fork, and each one of these is different, so not all of them are the same. But the only way you can check is set this thing up here, and I can tell that this is flush with this, and so I'm gonna have to cut this off, this tapered part. I have to cut that off completely so that I can thread our cap in here. Not a big deal. I can just cover this side up and with a cutoff wheel real quick. There it is. We picked up the pump, so we're good there. Like I said, now that we have this marked, we're not even questioning the direction it goes in, which is a big plus for us, because you can't tell, you can't feel anything otherwise. Now, speedometer gear only needs to be snug. You don't have to really wrench down on it, just enough where it ain't gonna go loose. That is just fine, because that is tight. So same deal with yoke, and that goes for any yoke that I'm putting on. I like to put a thin layer of red grease on there just because that high temp grease is gonna help slide into the seal without ruining it. And it even comes with a new rubber seal up. Yeah.
So what did the ocean say to the beach? It just waved.
Now we have the important part of measuring the drive shaft, so that's why I settled the suspension down, and now we can take our measurement. Now what I like to do is go from center joint to center joint, which means you're gonna go right at the face of the yoke. Now one of the things I like to do is go top to top and then bottom to bottom, because there's usually like a 1/2 inch to 1 inch difference, and then that way when we get our measurement I just equal out the difference, and that is the length of the drive shaft I need. 51.5, and the bottom is 51.25. So if it were me, I'm gonna favor the long side because I think the suspension will settle the more I use it, and we'll go with 51.5 because it's going to actually work backwards as the suspension settles because it's leaf springs. All right, we got the rear end all done minus bleeding the brakes. We'll do that and then we'll get the Jeep turned around so we can start on the front end, which we got a lot to do up front. You guys are gonna want to stay tuned for that. Appreciate you watching. We'll see you next time.
If you like these videos, please share with your friends.